exact map that these two teams came to back in stage 1 when they played against each other. So, is it going to go how it did last time, or are things going to be changed up? Well, the first thing to start with is, of course, the operator bans.
Monty, there you go. I kind of preempted that one, Gio. I don't know whether my Australian internet made it look like I said that after it came up on my screen, but I will say technically it was before it came up on my screen. And that was as Jess and Des mentioned on the desk. Virtus.pro have actually banned Monty a few times. On Villa, funnily enough, it's not just NaVi that they banned it against. They also banned it against G2 in the August Major. So not surprising to see that taken out. However, an Ash ban is not something you see every day. Are NaVi trying to counterban Rask and take him off his comfort? Maybe NaVi really want to lean into the Maestro and the Goyo? Is that what the strategy is here? And they want to try and remove the amount of explosives available? This is quite a strange ban, not going to lie to you.
Definitely unusual, and your line of thinking there was very parallel to what I was also thinking, because Rask obviously very much takes Ashe a lot of the time, but if you look in Navi's last game that they played against G2, no one on Navi played Ashe the most, but Rask has still been playing Ashe the whole time, back when they played on this map, and obviously when they played in their last map as well against Team Empire. And you look back and it was Doki who mostly picked up Ashe when they played together in stage 1, but since Joe and Blur have come in, some of those roles have been switched up somewhat, and you can't really expect that to be the same story anymore.
And as much as Ashe is kind of known for being a fragging operator, just run and gun, she actually has some of the most important utility in the game, especially in the utility clearing meta that we see ourselves in these days, where you've got so much bulletproof utility. If you look at the Virtus.pro defense right now, we've got Melusi, that's 3 wild wobs, Goyo, that's 2 extra shields. No shields on any other VP players, but that's a lot of utility that needs to then be cleared. And Ashe not only has 2 explosives, but she also has flashbangs that can clear out the Wamai's magnets and the ADSs. So I guess that's part of the reason, but funnily enough, Virtus.pro, while they have leaned into this, the Goyo and the Melusi, they opted not to bring a Jaeger whatsoever. So NaVi, it's pretty cut and dried to clear out those shields and the wobwobs using the Zephyr explosives and the 4 grenades that they've got on 2 fairly uncommon picks, the Yana and the Nook.
Yeah, I find it very interesting, obviously, because NaVi have decided to forego the Goyo ban this time. It means it's very much available in the hands of Virtus.pro. They really like that operator, and having those 4 C4s is going to be crucial, especially as they decided to come here to Dining and Kitchen first. And you oftentimes see a lot of vertical play on this site, so it's highly likely that you'll see NaVi come in from above and then go down onto the site. And obviously, we all know that playing with C4s, particularly when one is in the hands of the Pulse, it can make vertical takes quite dangerous.
I'm really enjoying everything we've seen from NaVi so far. I know it's very early days, but you know how to get me riled up. It's you do some weird bans, you bring some weird ops, and you start to tease me a little bit. That's exactly what NaVi have done here. Ashe ban, that's kind of weird. And we're in this very unusual in these days kind of environment where there are so many operators on the board. Thatcher's in, Maverick's in, all of our hard breaches are in. You still have your Echo and your Maestro. That's an early trade. WTG finds 1 onto Doki, but that's okay. There's still redundancy in terms of hard breach, and Noki hasn't been the hottest player so far, but a good trade there from Blur to make sure the numbers are kept even.
Really characteristic of this playstyle that we've been seeing from NaVi that has been particularly poignant since they got these new players, and that is that unapologetic aggression. And Blur obviously still holding down the corridor, very much in line with where Virtus.pro are, as he's down on the ground floor. And you're right, Doki not showed up quite to the same extent, but obviously still a useful player to have. You don't want him dead.
Well, there's an early 1v1. Joe actually himself taken out. One of those new players who was very impactful, at least on the defense. And Rask, the player we talked about, perhaps the Ashe counterban was for him, but he's happy on the Melusi for now. And that 1v1 goes his way, does further reduce the numbers here for NaVi, but Kendra's opened up this pantry wall into kitchen. Ness denies a rotation within that room, and Rask will have to be very careful. Early engagements elsewhere, but actually I say early, it's not so much early anymore, and it certainly isn't early in terms of how many players are left alive. NaVi relying on just Blur and saves.
You can see that these members of Virtus.pro are already in position just to take whomever it may be who aggresses upon them. Blur getting ready in with the frag grenade, and it doesn't actually get Shockwave, nor does it get the shield that's protecting him. So he didn't manage to get any utility or a player, and as you mentioned, James, time is ticking away with just about half a minute remaining. Blur's remaining upstairs.
Seems like he wants to get some info here. He's actually going to use the nade. Was that just for sound cover, potentially? I don't think he was trying to get a mute jammer, but the player covering from what we call crafty sometimes, who actually gets the injure onto the player in Astro, traded out from above. And, well, Virtus.pro, it started strange, but it started strong, and that's one round for you.
Disappointing start there for NaVi, particularly as one of the important things that was mentioned and that is worth bearing in mind going forward in this series is that NaVi have supremely struggled on their attack rounds in this stage. Derry mentioned it. They've taken 4 attack rounds in 3 games. They didn't take a single one against G2, regardless of how dominating their defense was. And Virtus.pro, who have almost been on the opposite side of things and had a particularly strong defense, are going to make it very hard for them to improve on that statistic. And yet it is a statistic that they cannot afford to fall flat on if they want to be keeping their chances of staying high in the standings, particularly in the top 4.
Now, Villa hasn't been played much here in Stage 2 of the EUL, only once so far, and overall it was actually a dead 50-50 win rate at the moment. And if you look back at Stage 1, of course, we've had some new operator changes, Ace being the most prominent one, and I think everyone tends to agree that Stage 2, and since the allowance of Malusi and Ace into the pro play, and we've got the secondary high breach gadgets, I think most people agree that we're entering a less defensive-sided meta. I don't want to say a more attacker-sided, I would say less defensive-sided. But even last stage, Villa was at 57% win rate for the defense, which is not as much as you would expect, right? We're talking, we've seen 60% or upwards in other regions. And as I mentioned, so far in Stage 2, dead 50-50. And that's why I'm really looking at NaVi here. You've mentioned that attack has been a weakness for them time and time again. They lost 6 in a row against G2 just earlier this week. They really need to dig their feet in here while they're on their attacking side, especially with these set of operator bans, which leaves your powerhouses like Thatcher, Maverick on the table. We really need to see NaVi step up.
I think what's also incredibly important for NaVi in this game is it's a sheer game of mentality for them. We know they're an emotional team, and they didn't take the loss to G2 very well, and I don't think anyone would.
No, not at all.
But because they're now going up against VP, who were the team that stole their place away from them in the major, it's all the more important.
Yeah, I remember that tweet came out from Kendrew. I don't like to throw people under the bus, but I'm doing it anyway. Kendrew was very emotional after that loss to G2. Made a tweet that he later regretted, ended up deleting it. And yeah, I really felt that pain for NaVi after losing that game. But, you know, mentality is 50%, I think, of the game here for NaVi. And certainly starting on attack, starting on their less favored side will hurt them in that regard. Doki drones out Pasha downstairs. We'll see how NaVi can shape up moving forward. Just clearing out this downstairs area. They don't have a buck, but they still can open holes in the floor or kill players by cooking these nades. At the moment, the sights are mainly on Pasha, who's still roaming downstairs.
Milan's actually going to be the first one to pick up a kill as Kendrew goes down. Once again, that's your ace. It's also your in-game leader, but there's going to be 2 kills coming out from Joe to turn things around. Shockwave and Rask both falling, and now it's all collapsing in somewhat as WTG adds on to the kill count. Now, this is all happening a lot earlier in the round than we saw in that last round, and NaVi may still be able to hold on to some of this control that they started off for themselves. It's a 3 versus 3. Doki getting ready to open up the vault wall, but it appears it's got a mute jammer on it that'll have to be cleared first.
What a shame that Saves is already dead. Yep, well, Virtus.pro on a 3v3. I think they're pretty comfy here, just holding on. There's Blur trying to get rid of that mute jammer that you mentioned with those X-Kairos still sitting on the wall, but there's actually a lot of places this mute jammer could be. And in fact, it is actually placed inside of games itself. You'll see on the south side of the wall. Thank you very much, easy. And makes it much more difficult for Blur. He's going to spend a little while here wasting his ammo into the floor to try and clear that, but he's actually completely given up.
frustrating position for Na'Vi to be, knowing that they know exactly what to get rid of, and you can actually see Joe droning into Vault so that they know exactly where it is they need to be going for, because suddenly a lot of time has slipped away, and what could have been an advantage no longer is. 2 kills for Virtus.pro, and it doesn't take much for them to finish things up, as Na'Vi were left floundering when they couldn't open up the wall.
3 versus 3 with 1:15 left. Thanks to Joe getting really aggressive on the skull doorway near top red at landing. He found 2 kills, and that even up the man count because Milan had managed to find Kendrew and Saves had died elsewhere. But as you mentioned, a significant stall out on that 90 wall. I wonder though, did Blur actually have a grenade? If he had cooked a grenade and just thrown it where that jammer would be, it would have destroyed it, even if he didn't necessarily get the exact right spot. But nonetheless, I think that just shows how damaging it was to lose Saves early on the Thatcher. It would have just been so easy to chuck down an EMP, clears that jam. You don't even need to know where it is. You just know that it's gone. And then you get that wall open. But Na'Vi, they hit a brick wall. They hit, I mean, literally, I guess. And they could not progress any more from it. And I do want to kind of touch on Saves for a minute. A player that hasn't really stepped up so much recently. He was a saving grace for Na'Vi in a lot of nigh unwinnable, if not completely unwinnable situations during stage 1. And I looked at Saves and I thought, wow, how is he popping off on so many of these occasions where Na'Vi really should be losing the round? He ended up being the top rated at the end of last season, but he's seen a bit of a role change now. He used to play the Zafir, the Val. He used to be a bit more aggressive, often the entry, often making explosive plays, but Joe's taken that position and Saves has had to take a little bit of a step back. Consequently, he's really failed to deliver.
Attackers must locate and defuse the bomb.
I think also, you know, getting into the swing of role swaps obviously takes some time. This is day 4, so you can have some of that empathy for them and say, okay, we understand it takes time, but at the same time, the time left in the stage will begin to run out, as it already has been doing. So while you can be empathetic, you can't always say that it's enough. Pasha, he brings down Joe. Joe, obviously that player who got the crucial double kill for Na'Vi in that last round, and now no longer is that available, and Pasha will be going on a large rotate as he rendezvous with Rusk down in the basement. Question is to whether or not Na'Vi know they're there.
It's very much going to be a persistent story, I think, for this team, for Na'Vi. The new roster and how it's going to work out. Joe, he's hit and miss, but this round he's a miss. Last round he was a hit, but it didn't manage to convert. And we really need to see some consistency out of him. Saves with the 417 of all weapons, finds Pasha. Nice job there, but he takes a lot of damage for it. This is not very common. I remember the days of the F2 being the best gun in the game, and now it is in fact foregone in favor of this DMR. Might actually find another kill through here. Nope, can't land the shots through that bookcase.
They obviously know that
what is that? Like little, I don't know, a little case of some kind.
It needs to be picked up. This bathroom is a mess. I'm sorry, it's a very nice bathroom. I would like to have a bathroom that's that nice. That he is actually still going to be there on the bathroom wall as WTG gets taken down straight away by Blur. He's below and he's still on the flank. And obviously Rask, you can see, has made his way back up to the top floor after spending so much time down in the basement. And it's still going to make it hard for Na'Vi to push in, although they do have the man advantage, and there's time as well. They've switched over who is holding the diffuser. This time it's no longer going to be Kendrew, who started off the round with it in his hands. But Virtus.pro know the direction from which they're coming, and they're preparing themselves for it.
Doki is so keen to jump into this window, but he gets tapped right in the face. Very nice shot there from Milan. He's actually foregone the 1.5 site for the new Hollow. He's about to get another engagement, but doesn't land the damage he needs to. Second spray does the trick. Just under 30 seconds left, and Na'Vi need to pick up the pieces.
I had to bite my hand there to get myself through the pain, and I wasn't even the one playing. But Blur and Saves, they are now the ones remaining. The bottom of the Astro stairs is where Blur will find himself, but Rask is obviously ready for him to make his way up, and that leaves just the Twitch. Very low HP and still sitting outside with fewer than 10 seconds remaining. It doesn't look like there's much hope here for Saves unless he can just get one kill. The environment's gonna get it, I guess. And Virtus.pro will be getting their 3rd round in a row.
It's funny, Gio. It feels like these rounds are just becoming more and more Virtus.pro sided. And now they've made their way through all 3 bomb sites they'll need to touch in order to get through their defensive half. NaVi, they do clearly have a bit of fire in them, especially with some early engagements. Like Joe, we talked about in round 2 on the Aviator attack. He got into a really aggressive position just outside the bomb site from Aviator and managed to find 2 kills, but NaVi unable to convert. This time around, he's the initial pick. Saves, eventually finds one back, but NaVi, it felt like they didn't quite have a coherent push overall. We had Doki trying to push from the heads window, and we had another player to support. They were both taken down by Mulan at the end of the day, so nice shots from the Pulse, but I really feel like rounds in Rainbow Six at a tier 1 level should not be dictated by 1v1 gunfights. In fact, teams invest all their time and energy into not just becoming the best at taking 1v1 fights, but making it so that 1v1 fights aren't the be-all end-all of the game. You expose positions using utility, using opening up holes in walls, in floors. And then you start to take ground away from the defenders. You start to set up and execute. But NaVi were never afforded that luxury. Even though they ended up in a 4 versus 3, that soon became a 1 versus 3.
10 seconds remaining.
Frustrating position to be in.
5 seconds left.
NaVi, who've obviously had a slip from grace, they're currently 7th in the standings in Stage 2, and I believe 6th overall in Season 1 of EU League. And this was a team who, at the start of this stage, you know, when these roster swaps were noted, people were saying, top 4 easy. Easily. And I think that's what's so hard, is because NaVi also know that. They're not going into these games thinking, we've slipped, we've gotten worse, we can't do it. They're thinking, no, we can do it, and it's not happening, and we need to fix it. And that's where the emotions come in, and that's where a lot of that mental fortitude is going to be the challenge for them. They obviously still have rounds on the board that they can play with to turn it around and shift that momentum. But the question is, are they going to?
I know we like to give players the benefit of the doubt, and we don't like to, make statements when we don't know things for sure, but I think we have a right to speculate here. And NaVi, they're clearly an emotional team. Every round they lose here is just another hit to their pride when, as you said, the pressure is on. There's a lot of expectation out of them. Now, Virtus.pro, with a 3-round lead, they've extended their roam horizontally, and NaVi, in turn, have taken control of the top floor. Quite a contrast. NaVi were never able to take this control on their previous attack of this bomb site, so that's critical, but C4 does land and take Joe down to 50 HP. There are still more C4s on the board in the hands of Rask, and I believe Shockwave still has his available. No, in fact, WTG and Shockwave both used, so we're looking mainly at Rask here to see if he can land some more damage.
Well, it's going to be Kendrew who gets the first kill, and that allows NaVi to move on forward. But actually, Pasha turns things around on Joe, who maybe got a bit overzealous there. You mentioned that, of course, Virtus.pro haven't been able to have this same top floor hold, and I think part of that is the way Doki placed those air jabs, but of course, they also know that, and Virtus.pro are prepared to have this more lateral hold. This is a big risk for Doki to jump in, and it doesn't pay off because Rask was ready and waiting, and that means suddenly NaVi are significantly behind as Saves is bleeding out. He'll have to rely on one of his teammates to pick him up if he's to stay in this game, but otherwise it's just Blur and Kendrew. Milon gets that kill onto Kendrew, so make that just Blur.
I've loved everything about the start of this push from NaVi, but they opted to forego both of the hard breaches that they used to bring, both Hibana and Ace, in order to speed up that roam clear with the Jackal and deny counter-aggression with the Nomad. But, it clearly hasn't worked, and it meant that when they finally got to the point of they had laundry control, they had top floor control, they wanted to go and execute onto the bomb site, but they didn't have hard breach to open laundry. They couldn't open pantry either. And it made it basically impossible. It's just a funnel. We saw players jump into windows, into areas that they hadn't cleared. Virtus.pro still had horizontal map control of the living side. Blur really can't do anything. He can find one kill, but he's just trading with Milan. That's the end of the rounds. Virtus.pro found 4 defenses back-to-back.
You can see how tentative these players who are left at the end on NaVi have to play, because there are so many holes in the floor. They've got to watch out for every single angle. And even the way that Virtus.pro are setting themselves up in the late game so that they have every single angle covered, and makes it virtually impossible for the last players of NaVi to be able to push forward and move forward anywhere close to the site. As soon as Blur knew he was the last one remaining, or realistically was anyway, as Saves was technically still alive, he went prone, he looked looked at his cameras, and then he had to crouch along because you know that you're being watched. Your diffuser is on the other side of the map. Do you have time to go and get it? Well, in that instance, no, he didn't really. He had to see if he could get any of those vertical shots through, and he went for Milon, which didn't work out in his favor. But basically, all of that has to be taken into account before he can even hope to do something as crazy as moving down a staircase, because there is just so much pressure being held by Virtus.pro, who have their positioning down to pat.
I really feel like a lot of that came down to the operator picks from NaVi. They kind of shafted themselves from the get-go by not bringing that hard breach, and it meant that even they could take that top floor control and find the initial pick, they just couldn't execute. They had to try and push because they had less entryways into the bomb site on account of not bringing hard breach. They had to try and push from lounge and living and all that part of the map that Virtus.pro still had control of. And in my opinion, Gio, NaVi are continually shafting themselves right now with their operator picks. Saves going onto the Jackal instead of the Thatcher. Remember how much of a headache it was last time for NaVi to open up that vault wall? They had the X-Kairos there, but that mute jammer was the end of them. And that was because Saves picked Thatcher, but he died early. Now imagine if he was Thatcher now. He could literally just throw one in from the 90 window, disable that, and you could use the Ace now, since the Hibana has also been foregone in favor of the Nomad. NaVi are so cautious of these roamers and these flankers by picking two operators dedicated to countering that with the Nomad and the Jackal, that they're missing out on some of the fundamentals of breaching. I think that's going to punish them.
Oh, to be a Thatcher.
Attackers have located a bomb.
Mike Baker from Bideford, England. What a beautiful man. Beautiful facial hair as well. You mentioned in the last time that this happened, the last round they came here, that Blair, of course, could have used the frag grenades to try and get rid of it from below, which I don't think is something that happened. Both of us were speculating. Maybe we missed it, but it wasn't something we noted. However, that's obviously still an option. That's a nice C4 straight up onto Doki, who has had a really unfortunate time so far in this game. Very little time spent alive. But obviously, he isn't on Hibana this time, so he isn't going to be relied upon to get any of the walls open. But that does put more pressure on Kendrew, as he is the only option in that instance.
Remember, the only reason this round looked winnable last time was because NaVi found two picks. Oh, thank goodness, the wall is open. I don't know where the, how they managed to open up the, no, they didn't destroy the mute jammer, they just put it on the left side and the mute didn't reach that. Cool, but there was a pick, oh my god, picks left, right, and center. There's a minute 20 left, and NaVi, I know that Joe, he just wants to peek this, and it might happen soon.
Oh, he can taste the murder. He can't quite get it. He doesn't finish the kill, but Pasha has taken quite a significant amount of damage. There we go,
Nice.
There's a murder. He got it. He's finally on some criminal watch list somewhere, and that means that he can move on forward and maybe do some more Joe things throughout the round, because he certainly hasn't been insignificant so far. Just the team's been unlucky.
Changing max.
Yeah, he's still got a Claymore in pocket. I would have liked to see him just chuck that down on the red stairs. Really hard to see the red Claymore lines on the red stairs, but I guess it doesn't matter. I think NaVi are confident the last three players are all on site or nearabouts, and Joe's decided to pinch here from Study. He checks there's no one in that corner using Concussion. I like that move, but when he peeks top main stairs, Ras takes him down. WTG as well, locking out Blur. Suddenly, once again, it's all on Kendrew, the lone hard breach, low HP, still gas on the table. There is no way I can see Kendrew winning this round.
Kendrew is the king of the clutch. We've seen it happen before, so I don't want to discount him too much, but obviously with Rask still alive, who's been an absolute monster in this game, I wouldn't blame him for feeling scared, and there's the crossfire completely set up, and Pasha, he gets the last kill. Kendrew can't survive it out, and now NaVi only have one more opportunity to take an attacking round, something they've struggled with so much in this stage.
Well, it's a very difficult upwards road now for NaVi. This is just, like I said near the start, I actually started off pretty well. Like that second round, yeah, some good early picks, but it really feels like every single moment here, Virtus.pro has been well and truly in control of this game. Yes, they're on the defense. Yes, that should be favored. No, it should not be this favored. It should not be a 5-0 scoreline on your defense. Even if NaVi win this, I'll have to be really, really solid on their defense to win this one out. And I just don't think that Ash ban is going to do enough to the Virtus.pro attack for NaVi to be able to come back here.
But they do have a Thatcher, so consider this. EMPs. I know it's crazy, but just take a moment.
Look, it might help. I'll give you that. And one thing I will note is actually really unusual from NaVi, the amount that they have been changing their attacking lineup from round to round. It's really common in meta these days to basically just run the same 5 operators, at least for the same site. You might have one player that flexes between a few different operators when you want to bring that little bit of spice into the mix, but we've seen Doki and Kendrew, who have been the 2 primary support players for this roster right now, switching operators constantly. We've had a round with 0 hard breaches, we've seen rounds with 2 hard breaches, we've seen rounds with just the 1 hard breacher, and there isn't a lot of consistency here. And what that signals to me is that NaVi are not sure. They're not sure exactly what they need. What? That's a run out and a half. He finds one, eventually traded, but my goodness, Saves is once again starting the round low HP. NaVi cannot catch a break.
Oh, if that worked out, that would have been, you know, if that worked out as in Pasha hadn't have been traded, that would have been incredibly jammy.
That's the Thatcher that you were talking about as well.
Yeah, well, one of the things I was going to say beforehand is Doki obviously been dying very early. Ooh, goodbye Shockwave.
This is impossible to cast. Stop killing each other. We can't cast it when you guys are killing each other.
Slow down for 1 second. Please. What I was gonna say is obviously Doki has been lost very early a lot of time. It's gonna happen again, isn't it? It's gonna happen again!
What?
WTG straight down! Joe, the king of the bathroom. He has taken his throne.
There's still 2 minutes left in a 4v2. Rask knows he's got to get aggro. It's the classic thing that's got to happen when your defensive team is at a deficit. Do something a bit crazy. Make a play. They know that if they sit here, NaVi should win the round, especially now that, well, there was no wall denial. And the impact trickers were both killed, Pasha and WTG. Milon got the long angle. He can finish off what was left of Saves. And Rask is going to jump into it. Surely, Gio, this is not a 2 versus 4. NaVi, they're on the verge here, but they might be able to close it out.
Milon, the newest player for Virtus.pro, who has been showing up lately, and he still has a C4 in hand as well. NaVi have plenty of time on the board, so they take the time to drone out and then hopefully start to secure a pinch. Milon, he's behind the shield, but he dips out, and Kendrew takes the shot from himself. So NaVi do take an attacking round, and at least there's something positive to head into the next half with.
Yeah, guys, we didn't get flawless on our attack. Woo, let's go! Let's go! Let's get into it!
You take what you can get. Don't complain.
Well, you gotta deal with the hand that's been dealt, and you can't dwell on your past mistakes. You've got to move on. NaVi, well, they were reverse swept 6 rounds in a row by G2 just earlier this week, and well, if they have any hope of taking the 3 points against Virtus.pro here, they're gonna have to do the same.
I have to say, one thing that I find really funny about that previous round is one of the things I was thinking was, oh, you know, I think it was Rask in Astra. It's like, well, he's still got a shield, and, you know, NaVi, they've got the lifelines. They have 2 operators who are carrying frag grenades. They'll be able to get rid of that. Didn't even need to do that. And then Milon at the end, they didn't even need to get rid of his shield. So apparently, the key for NaVi is don't worry about the utility you've got to get rid of. If you just get the kills, right? That's when it works out for you. But obviously now they're on their defense, so things have changed around, and the defensive side is definitely one that NaVi have shown themselves to be a lot more comfortable on of late.
Yeah, I hate to be hypercritical, but I do feel like NaVi have... They really didn't have a right in winning a lot of these rounds. So yes, they lost the majority of them, but it sucks to think, but the feeling I'm getting so far in this match is that NaVi look like they could possibly win a round when they just pull off something crazy aggro, like when Joe goes and gets a few kills. That's the only 2 rounds that have really looked winnable, including the one that actually won. Joe just did something crazy aggressive, and it worked. That's not a way to keep things consistent.
No. Yeah,
he's hit and miss, isn't he?
He is that stereotyped characteristic of him being the god of the windows didn't pay off in that one. One thing that I think's really...
Jump
Out Joe, it sounds like a Mr. Men. Or like, you know, some like kids cartoon character. I think Des said it sounded like an action figure, one of those really cheap action figures you get when you're a kid. I kind of see it.
Yeah, I get that.
Blur looking for something out the window, but won't be finding anything. Instead, he'll go for the impact trick to prevent the wall from being open. Interesting as well, Kendrew hasn't brought impact, so only Blur was the one who had the opportunity to do that, as the bulletproof has been chosen. Now, this is, there are 3 members of NaVi around here. No, just 2. Okay, Saves is down the corridor, and that's going to make this 90 window very risky to peek.
Yeah, I really thought Milan was going to get that kill, but no, Blur's allowed to rotate out. Milan was looking for it. I like the idea here from NaVi going for that stat hold, but since Joe was picked off early and Blur was at least able to take out one of the ace charges, they decided to back on out, and Virtus.pro's just killing everyone. That's cool. Doki was taken out. I think that was on the roam. Blur overextends at 90, and Milan was there all along. Now NaVi, 2 versus 5, and it's the old crew, Saves and Kendrew.
Bomb located.
You have players from Virtus.pro down below as well, so you could find some vertical pressure being applied here onto Saves, and that's exactly what was attempted. Saves won't be able to get the shot down in through the floorboards, but he knows that there's someone down there as he gets droned out as well. Under a minute now, and Virtus.pro probably don't have to sweat much, but Kendrew, he gets a kill from himself, and that's Rask gone. But now Saves, he's got to hold on to this door, and he knows that there's so much coming from him, or for him, I should say. Pasha, he adds to his own kill count, leaving just Kendrew, but he doesn't last too long. Virtus.pro take their 6th round and put themselves comfortably on match point.
If NaVi were an Olympic diver, they stepped up to the platform, they did their stretches, they puffed up their chest, they looked impressive, and then they dived directly just to the side of the pool. They didn't even make it into the water.
Oh, no.
They just fully stacked it. And they're sitting at 1-6 right now, staring down the verge of match point. Best they can hope for is a draw. I don't think they're going to get it. This hasn't looked like a game for NaVi fans to be very happy. The Russians, on the flip side, have done a very good job at shutting down this aggression and spicing it up with a little bit of their own. And I think if NaVi are relying on getting away with aggressive plays, I think that they've got to change something, because Joe has been missing as much as he's been hitting.
Bombs from being defused by attackers.
It's really disappointing, and one of the things that you mentioned earlier really stuck out to me, because you said NaVi seem to be doing the best when they play really aggressively, and you see Joe getting a 2K, and that's the momentum off of which they travel forward. But the problem with that is these days you can't rely on being that team. No one wants to be that team. You're the team who win because you get good kills sometimes. You want to be the team who win because you have the great comms, you have the great coordination, you can overcome whatever adversity throws itself your way in your game. And right now NaVi don't seem to be that team.
5 seconds.
You don't want to be the team that's just good because you can shoot, because guess what? Everyone at this level of play can shoot. Well, most people. And you need some more dimension if you want to find yourself in the top 4, like NaVi so nearly did. If you want to find yourself in the EU finals, like they could. If you want to find yourself the same team that won back in Japan, you need to be that team.
And of that Pro League Championship roster, we only have Kendrew and Saves remaining. And both players have actually really struggled. We talked about Kendrew, the mental game getting to him a little bit. And Saves, I really find Saves a very interesting case, because he's been kind of pushed off of his most comfortable roles where he used to shine when he was an entry. Thanks to, well, Joe and Blur kind of taking those more aggressive positions, and now Saves has to be somewhere he's not quite as comfortable, and the results have definitely demonstrated that. Overall, NaVi I think they're lacking a little bit of depth, and it's going to take time. Like, you can't expect your roster to be perfect from the get-go. That impact trick actually only gets the top line of X-Kairos. The bottom line is opened up. Where on earth did that kill come from? Pasha, was he on the roof? He was looking down the skylight, and he got the first pick. This is spiraling right now. There's still a chance in it for NaVi, but not if Virtus.pro play this well.
Oh, the crazy things you see on Villa. In NA League, we saw Repel in Skylight. Now we're seeing Pasha do that. Doki just trying to hold onto this pixel angle into the bathroom. He'll be throwing in one of the Toxic Babe canisters to hold back the attacking team, as he just waits patiently for anyone to attempt to move forward. Both of the impacts have been expended by Kendrew, so no longer will they be an option. And there's a nade coming straight in. That'll likely get the shield that Doki was taking refuge behind, just as NaVi gets Shockwave.
It's the last gas, though, for Doki. He hasn't even found a kill this map. 0-7, poor guy. Really struggling to find an in on this support. Now he's basically trapped. Pasha has such a favored angle here. Doki really needs to go and rotate up somewhere else, otherwise he's a dead man. Unless he can pull off an insane shot, I just don't think it's going to happen here against Pasha. 40 seconds left, VP in a 4v4. But do they have an in here? They've got the breach, but there's a shield to cut off that long angle. We really need to see Virtus.pro execute here and now.
There's the drone going in from Pasha. He just wants to make sure everything's clear, and he's found saves there in Trophy. This could be the opportunity for WTG to jump in, but be aware that Joe is in Classical Hall. There's the kills coming out from Virtus.pro, though, and it doesn't look like they're gonna stop Virtus.pro having maybe one of the most relaxed games of Stage 2 so far. Take a neat 7-1 against their former rivals of NaVi.
Honestly, that game was over so quickly. I feel like we hadn't even warmed up, and Virtus.pro were already taking us to 7-1. A near flawless defensive half and not dropping a single round on attack. You can't say here that NaVi's problem is just their attack, because they couldn't even dig their feet in.